Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Garden Report as we record this 1 week from round one of the NBA draft. We're excited to welcome in Rafael Barlowe to help us break this down because I don't know a ton about this class, Rafael. I know you've been tracking it for a long time here, and I know all you guys who break down the draft and scout it every year, go back even further than that, looking at high school prospects and all that too. So I guess I'll just ask first, how do you feel about this class in general?
It's an interesting class. It's not like years past where you had a wider range of prospects to choose from. When I look at this class, it seems like you were freshman one and done, mixed in with a couple like sophomores, international players, and then the rest of the draft is 4 or 5 year seniors that have 90 to 100 games of college experience under their belt. And on one hand, that could be good for the teams because you're not risking. I mean, everything is a risk, but you're not drafting a bunch of guys in the late first round that have only 30 games of experience. And so for veteran teams, you can get some guys that can plug and play and ready to contribute late in the first round. So I think that makes this draft a little bit different than years past, as there's just not a lot of freshmen or young players that were willing to gamble and bet on themselves if they were not projected to go in the lottery, just because NIL has just changed so much about the draft.
Yeah, and when I look at the list of players that the Celtics worked out through this process, at least officially or reportedly, I'd say like half of them at least went back to school. Yeah, I was looking for some of the scouting reports on them and seeing what those guys are all about, and then just looked up their names, and they were going back to school at that point. And that happened to a significant amount of this draft, right?
Yeah. And I remember talking to some executives at the NBA Combine, and on one hand, they were like, we need to bring these guys in to do our due diligence. We don't know if they're going to go back to school, even though 9 times out of 10 we think they are, just because the money's just too good to pass up. But then it's like, well, it never hurts us to bring guys in, get a chance to know them, and just kind of build a rapport and just kind of have notes on them for whether it's the next draft or free agency down the line. But there were a lot of guys that pulled out of the draft, and the money that's been thrown around and in college basketball, it's actually more lucrative for most guys to return to school where you're going to play probably 30 minutes a game than be the 18th or 19th pick in the draft. There was a player, JT Toppin, returned to Texas Tech for $4.1 million, which is the equivalent of being like the 13th pick in the draft, at least for 1 year's salary. That's a lot of money to turn down, especially when you're going to play.
Yeah, and you even had it felt like Cooper Flag at least considering going back, but that was probably never going to happen.
I mean, they said he made like $28 million at Duke this year, so yeah, maybe that part of it is tempting, but I just think for certain guys, it's better to come out early because you want to get to that second contract faster. But on the other hand, I mean, you look at Boston's situation, a guy that's a freshman or sophomore would probably find it more appealing to return to school and be the man in college and make a couple $1 million than be in Boston and you're in the same situation as Baylor Shireman or Jordan Walsh the last couple of years, and you're spending
a great point.
So things are changing so much every year.
Yeah, and it was a surprise to see Shireman go up there for as much last year as he did, but there just weren't minutes, and it could be a different situation this year, and this is what makes the draft for the Celtics so tough to nail down, along with this being a seemingly tricky class to me as I go through it here, is you don't know who's going to be on this team. You certainly know Jason Tatum's not going to be around this year, so you don't know the level to which you're competing for a championship this season. You might still be trying to be as good as you can be here, but you probably can't win a title without Tatum. I won't rule it out necessarily, but it's unlikely. And you're probably taking a bigger look at the future than you have in any of the drafts that Brad Stevens is overseeing here. And he just picked his first round pick for the first time last year in Shireman. It was 30th overall.
Yep.
So not many of these picks have been hugely consequential for them. A lot of them have just been flyers like JD Davison and Jordan Walsh you mentioned there. So there feels like more stakes on this pick or these pair picks that they have here at 28 and 32. But those are tough places to draft from, especially in a class like this, it seems like.
I think this year there's not going to be much difference between 15 through 35. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a chance that at 30 and 32, they could get some guys that many people are projecting in the top 20 or top 25, maybe even two guys. It happens every year. Guys fall. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, just even in relation to like the green room, there's been drafts where, they give out 24, 25 green room invites, and some guys slip to the second round just because you just never know what happens on draft night. So I do think that the Celtics are, I don't want to say they're in a great spot, but I do think that they are in position to where they should be able to get a couple guys that could probably crack their rotation this year, simply because of everything you guys are facing with the Tatum injury, and then the rumors about, some moves being made because of the apron and so on. But in the Celtics range, the players that are expected to be available are seniors, guys that have played 4 years or 5 years of college ball, and they're pretty experienced. So Boston should have a better feel of what they'd be getting from them.
Yeah, and so I look at their biggest needs as guard probably first and foremost, especially looking at the workouts they've done. It feels like they're pretty guard heavy or at least wing heavy at that spot, with some of the names they've brought in there, which I found interesting. Obviously, they can move on from Drew Holiday potentially here. You would think Peyton Pritchard would maybe step up into a starting role at that point, and then you're mixing in Shireman and maybe a rookie. Could bring someone back in one of the trades they make this summer. So the backcourt's definitely probably going to see some overhauling this offseason. And even with Davison signed to the full deal, I don't think he's a big part of their future necessarily at guard. He hasn't played many NBA minutes in the 3 years he's been around Boston. So I think they're pretty due to bring in a new developmental guard.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of names. There's a bunch of guys who are more wings, more off-ball players. It's a bunch of guys that are potentially point guards for the team here. And when I look at some of the mock drafts, we did a show yesterday, talked a little bit about Drake Powell, who's obviously more in that wing mold. There's some guys overseas. You hear about like Noah Penda potentially, in that range. Walter Clayton is a guy who I think has a pretty similar pedigree to Peyton Pritchard coming out in that draft, and maybe could slide into that backup guard role that Pritchard spent for a lot of his time out there. So when you think of guards in that late 20s range, early second round there, some of the names who are probably going to be available, Ben Sarif maybe.
Yep.
Um, who stands out as a good fit to Boston for you among a group of guys like that?
Well, before I even get into that, the question I have to ask myself is, these guys that they're bringing in, are they actually better than JD Davison? JD
Mm,
Davison may be the same age or even younger than some of these players, and he has more experience. He may be more ready to come in and contribute. He's played 2 or 3 years in the G League and so on. So in a fair and open tryout, would they beat out JD Davison? I don't know. I mean, I think that's just a fair question to ask. But within that range, Ben Sarthe would be good. I mean, I've seen him mocked in the late 20s. He's got good size. I think Cam Jones would be pretty interesting. He's a player that I think he led the Big East in scoring as a junior, and that was on a team that had two guys that was drafted out of Marquette, and Tyler Kolek and also Iguodaro. And he moved to point guard this year, and it was like nobody knew that he had point guard skills. Like, he had a really good year as far as like assist and taking care of the ball. The shooting numbers dipped a little bit as he had more offensive responsibility, but he's the one that could be available in that range. Then you look at like Drake Powell. Sion James is interesting. He's not a point guard, but he's a connector, a big physical defender. He could be available. Tyrese Proctor could be available. He's a player that after his freshman year at Duke, I thought he was going to be like a top 20 pick, and they ended up moving him off the ball, but he fits the mold as like a bigger guard that can shoot, that just knows his role as a connector. and he's got 3 years under his belt. So I think they have some pretty decent options there.
Yeah, let's talk about Jones for a minute because I was looking at him last night. His shooting numbers were great through the first 3 seasons, and
Yeah.
I think when you look at the 800 plus shots here, he's around like 37% from three, and didn't catch and shoot situations, off the dribble, a little bit of a dip this year, and like you mentioned, it's a different role for him, more attention on him, playing that guard spot. So he's 6'4", pretty good size at that spot, 6'6" wingspan. Assist to turnover ratio was pretty solid for him.
I think it might have
And
been the best in this class. I mean, it was like 3-1.
3.3, yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is a guy that hadn't played point guard before. So he could be someone that is very underrated. We could look 5 years from now and say, man, why didn't he go a lot higher? Because he's proven to be effective in 2 totally different roles for Marquette.
Yeah, and I think when I start thinking of guys like that who had success, going back to what year was that? 2015. Tyus Jones, 24th overall. Not a huge pedigree at that spot, but he ended up being a amazing backup for the Grizzlies for all those years. Borderline starter on the Suns when they took him on this year. Had a great year in Washington. So some of those guys who maybe project to like a backup point guard role in this league can end up exceeding expectations a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I was just talking to someone earlier today about like the 2014 draft, and Bogdan Bogdanovic was the 27th pick. But just bridging through the numbers, 15 guys from the 2014 draft are already out of the league. So it's always a crapshoot, but it seems like sometimes the backup point guards can stick. Like that guy that can stick around is like a third point guard. I mean, even look at Peyton Pritchard. He's given the Celtics in a redraft. He's probably given them lottery value.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unreal what he's done. And he was a contributor right away.
Yep.
Grew beyond what he was when he got into the league, even though he was an older guy too. And I don't know how you feel about that, because there's obviously some guys in this draft class who played 5 years. Jones himself, Cam Jones himself is 23 right now. And those guys usually seem to take a hit in terms of where they go. Shireman last year as well played 5 years. And that to me doesn't matter a ton from my view. Like, I know there's not as much of an upside play necessarily there. Maybe there's a shorter career because you played some of those years in college. I guess there's some factors there the teams take into account. But I think we've seen, even a guy like Desmond Bane, who just got traded this week, played a long time in college and ended up having a great NBA career. So I don't know why that still seems to be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the unknown is sexier. Like I was just talking to someone and I was asking, like, who would be more appealing in a trade right now for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Just throwing it out there. Would the Bucks rather have Dylan Harper or a proven De'Aaron Fox? And they would probably rather have Dylan Harper, even though he has not played a single game. Obviously, he's a lot cheaper, but something about the unknown seems more appealing. And one and dones aren't necessarily unknowns, but it just seems like the more games that people have to evaluate you, it hurts you more than it can help you.
Yeah, that's funny. You get into the flaws, right? More so than a guy who's understood to be flawed because he's so early.
Yeah, and that's what brought me to JD Davison. Like, I think it's natural to assume that a rookie is going to come in and play over him, but wasn't he like the G League MVP or
He
something
was.
like that? Yeah, so it's probably the same age, not much of an age difference. He's going to be more experienced. He already knows how to be a pro. I don't think it's a lot that whoever they take late in the first round is going to come in and be better than him.
Well, our co-host Noah Delzo is going to be very excited to hear that because she's probably his biggest fan. I liked him too. The growth's been there in the G League, and there haven't been a ton of NBA minutes. You want to see that before you start to make assumptions about what a guy could do at that next level, because a lot of people succeed in the G League and it doesn't quite translate. But his strides this year and last year as well were serious. Shooting coming along a little bit. The passing's obviously there. I guess for him, it's the size and defense. You wonder, will that translate? But and maybe teams playing off him a little bit. If he's going to be an on-ball guy, can he play off-ball to some degree? But he's got a team option this year. They'll probably decline that for money reasons, but I would think he'd be in camp to at least compete with these guys, like you said. And how old is he now at this point? When we're
He
talking about a Jones who's 23,
yeah.
Davison's 22.
Yeah, he played 1 year, and if he were in this draft, and if someone told him, "All right, you're projected to go second round," he probably would have went back to school and got better as a sophomore, developed in college, and then would have been, a lottery pick a year later. It's crazy that it's only been like 3 years, but so much has changed since then. Drake Powell might be the only freshman that like bet on himself and gambled like JD Davison did a few years ago.
So I want to jump on to some other names that he mentioned. Sion James looks
Yeah.
like more of a wing. Not super
Yeah.
familiar with him. What's the scout on him?
Big physical specimen, just knows how to play the right way. He's a guy that with his size, he can be a ball handler, a connector. He can defend multiple positions. He's gotten a lot better as a shooter. Maybe he's like Najee Marshall in a sense. And I live in Dallas, and Najee had a good year for Dallas when everything unfolded with the Luka Doncic trade, and they had a bunch of injuries. But his nickname is the Knife because he's so versatile. He can do so many different things. So I think James could have like a Najee Marshall type role. And the shooting has been the biggest improvement. Like he was always a guy that could run the offense and pass for his size, but he's shot the ball extremely well the last couple of years.
Yeah, so you have a couple interesting wings in the mix here between him, Adou Thiero from Arkansas, who we talked about on the show yesterday.
Do you
Guess
guys
Noah
like him?
Penda. I like some things about him. I've watched him a little bit at this point, and like the free throw numbers are really interesting. He gets to the line or got to the line a ton last year. The shooting though is
Yeah.
not quite there, and I think that's always tricky when you're looking at 3-and-D guys who can't put the ball in the basket because you got to
Yeah.
be a threat.
Right. I spoke to a coach in the SEC, and I did a article today on my NBA Big Board newsletter, and I interviewed a coach from the SEC, and he just was raw and unfiltered about all the prospects, and he broke down, their team's personal scouting reports, how they defended the guys. And he liked Thiero, but he was like, it's hard to stick if you're a wing, and you can't dribble, you can't shoot, and you can't pass. And I thought that was very interesting to hear a coach say that. And then he even mentioned in their scouting report that they attacked him, but they was like, he's so athletic that he could make up for, being attacked on defense. But he thought that he was somewhat of an overrated defender, but he can make up for it because he's just such a gifted athlete. But again, I thought it was interesting. He was like, you're talking about a guy that is an athlete, but he can't dribble, he can't shoot, or you can't pass. And how do you make it in today's NBA without those three skills?
Yeah, and that's where I'm worried about Drake Powell a little bit too, who's floating around in this range. Is there's a lot of defensive stuff to love, it looks like, but he was like ninth in usage on his team
Yeah,
from what
he
I
just
read,
was a
and
bad fit. It was a bad fit. I mean, he came
yeah,
into the year with lottery range. I really liked him, and he just went to North Carolina. I mean, I look at it as a situation. You had a Carolina kid that probably chose the school because he grew up a Carolina fan and didn't really factor in fit and who they had returning. There were times where he was playing the four. If I'm not mistaken, when they played Duke, he was guarding Cooper Flag and playing the
yeah.
four. So he was playing way out of position, and North Carolina did not put him in the best position to maximize his skill set. Low volume of attempts, but he shot, if I'm not mistaken, like 38% from three. I think the signs are there. I just think that he went to a bad situation, but he's a player that if I'm Boston, I'm definitely kicking the tires on, because if he would have went back to school another year and was in another situation, he would have probably been out of the Celtics range. So he's someone that I would definitely target if I'm Boston.
Yeah, he could maybe be there at 32 in that second round range, and
I even
you
take
know,
him at 30, to be honest with you.
or 28 rather. Yeah,
28, I'm sorry, yeah, 28. You guys were
yeah. It'd
30
be
last
interesting how
year,
you
right?
play. Yeah, they were 30 last year,
Yeah.
so it'd be interesting, like who you wait on at 28 for a couple more picks, think still there, and then who you absolutely have to have at 28 because you don't think they're going to be there at 32 at all. And maybe there's some movement with those picks too. A little hype about them moving up in the draft. So I guess I'll ask about some guys in a minute here, who, if they do move a little bit up the board, who they could be in range for. lower 20s, mid-teens, that sort of thing. I don't know how high up they can actually get with what they have right now, unless they swing a crazy trade, but definitely seems in play here. I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Prizepicks, and the championship series is still going on for at least one more game, and all the stars are available for your daily fantasy teams over on Prizepicks, where it makes it more fun to watch these games. They're saying it's going to be more than 30 for Shea per se, or Tyrese was healthy, loved going more on his assists. You can even mix and match leagues. Hockey's over now after the championship finale last night in that sport, but still baseball going on, esports as well, and a lot of other fun stuff over on Prizepicks. Right now, if you use the code CLNS, play a $5 lineup, you'll get 50 instantly in bonuses. Do you know, Ball? There's only one series left in the playoffs, and the championship is officially on the line. That means time's running out for you to put your final takes to the test on Prizepicks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Mix and match player projections from different sports. That's a great part of it. Flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect, especially on Flex Friday. Taco Tuesday, you get increase on player projections, or a discount rather, on those every Taco Tuesday, and there's always free squares going on and great promos over there, so go check it all out. Available in more than 30 states, and it's the best way to get action on sports for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. So use the code STEALNS, play a $5 lineup, get 50 instantly when you use Prizepicks for the first time. So go download the app today. Prizepicks, run your game. And a shout out to LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn jobs. Go over there to linkedin.com/garden. You can't clock out early as a small business owner. Your business is on your mind 24/7. So when you're hiring, you need a partner that works as hard as you do. And that hiring partner is LinkedIn Jobs. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. Post your job for free over there at linkedin.com/garden and get qualified candidates. You can post for free or pay to promote, and promote jobs get 3 times more qualified candidates. You can share it with your network, and 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them get high quality candidates. So find out why more than 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring today. Find your next great hire on LinkedIn. That's linkedin.com/garden to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So let's go a little further with some of the wings here. And I want to hear your thoughts on Noah Penda, who I think is interesting. Hasn't officially worked out for the Celtics from what I've seen, although Joe Mazzulla was over in Paris a week ago around, the area where he played there. I don't know. They're probably not still playing, right? That season's over. So maybe meeting with them or something like that. So what are your thoughts on him?
He's unique. He's a player that I haven't been as high on, but I get the appeal for him. There's a little bit of everything. He can play 3-4. He's a good passer. The shooting is a major concern, but he's like that hybrid connector that can make plays for others. Sneaky athlete. He's like, sometimes you watch him and you're like, hey, he's not a great athlete. Doesn't have a great first step, and then he'll wow you. This is probably a bad comparison, but people would understand it. And comparisons are always tricky, but he's like sneaky Paul Pierce athletic. So when people saw Paul, nobody ever thinks of Paul Pierce as like being a great athlete. But if you go on YouTube and see his compilation of dunks, like he has he has some incredible dunk highlights. And so Pierce, his game wasn't built off of athleticism. Now again, Penda's not Paul Pierce. He's not the shot creator, doesn't have, Paul's offensive repertoire, but it's a similar build, kind of doughy build, but there's some sneaky athleticism there. And so that's just my thoughts on Penda. But to me, his swing skill is just outside shooting.
Yeah, and what role do you see him filling positionally on a team?
Just off the bench, back in rotation, 3-4, a guy that, like I said, just your connector. He gives you another ball mover. Defender, has the size where he may be strong enough to guard some 4s, but he can defend some 3s. But like I said, it's all going to depend on the outside shooting. If he doesn't become a better shooter, then I don't know if what he brings to the table is enough to where he can get consistent minutes.
Any other wings I'm missing that you would find interesting for them?
Yeah, I mean, I like Drake Powell. I would definitely just gamble on his upside and just just everything that he can be, because I think that if he goes back to school, he's not in this range. Um, Will Riley, if he's available, I don't know if he
I've
will
seen
be
him
available.
mention.
I mean, everything that I've heard, he's had like a really, really good pre-draft process, and he ended up getting into the second wave of green room invites. So I guess that's a good sign for him. If the Celtics are looking for shooting, I mean, Chaz Lanier is a
So they
phenomenal.
worked him out.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal shooter, and it's not just catch and shoots. It's just step backs, deep threes. He can come off pin downs. So he's someone that kind of fits what you're looking for as far as just outside shooting. A little bit older, and I mean he's 23, but I mean he just shot an efficient. I mean he was really efficient from three, like 39%, but it was on a volume of attempts that were just all over the place. Like I said, on the move, deep threes. I think he made like 14 threes beyond like 30 feet or something like that. So I think as far as like a guy that has a defined role as a floor spacer, he's available. He's 6'5", doesn't have great size, but he's not small. John
Yeah,
Thompson from Washington. I mean, I'm sorry, from Wisconsin. Older. He's also 24, but he had a really good year. 19 points. He shot 38% from three, 90% from the line, 5 rebounds a game. He like had 1 year where he blew up. Like his previous years, he wasn't on anybody's radar, and then he just had this one season where he just, I mean, came out of nowhere, and he was heavily featured. But if he can scale down, but he has the good size that I think that you'd value. And like I said, he shot 38%, 39% from three, and had some really, really phenomenal and efficient games in the Big Ten tournament, and I want to say one game in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and they've been a little thin at win in recent years, and the Sam Hauser thing is just
A win.
all-time
Yeah.
development achievement for them. And to go from undrafted two-way then to finals minutes and a 4-year extension, one of the best shooters in the league over the last 4 years at volume in that kind of role. It's unreal what they've accomplished, and it feels like they're probably going to lose him this summer just because of the money crunch here. Maybe they'll hold on to him because it is a hard skill set to replace. Like you look at a lot of guys in every draft who you think could fill a role like that, but 6'8", defense, 41% from three every year. That just doesn't happen. And for them to find that undrafted, just pulling them away from the Heat, who I think were initially talking to him on a two-way, and then working them through Maine to develop the defensive side. That's going to be a battle to replace if they have to move on from Hauser this summer. Because like you said, Lanier a little shorter. Some of these other guys maybe didn't have the pedigree that Hauser did as a shooter through those college years, because he was shooting 40% in college every year as well as the NBA career.
Koby Brea could be that guy, but it just shows like how crazy scouting is. Sam Hauser was hiding in plain sight. Like he had the resume. It's just
another guy who was older and played in college for a
was
while.
older, but maybe people thought, and let's just be honest. I mean, people thought, oh yeah, white guy shooter can't defend, and I mean, I saw it in the finals last year. I live in Dallas. They were trying to attack him, and they weren't successful. And so I just think sometimes people get put in the boxes when you are just labeled as a shooter. And I think Koby Brea from Kentucky has a little bit more size than Chaz Lanier, more of a catch and shoot like spot shooter, but I mean he's dynamic. He shot like 43% this year, and it was the down year. He was almost at 50% from three his last year at Dayton. So I think that he could be like Sam Hauser light because of his size and his ability to shoot. I mean, you can't leave him open. So I think that he could be a solid replacement. But maybe I'm biased. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a big Baylor Shireman fan. Baylor's a really good passer, a really good
Baylor's going to get his
rebounder
shot
from
this year.
wing. Yeah, so he, it's kind of like you got your Hauser replacement already there.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of role he's in next year. I definitely think he could step up into some more minutes. We had him on the show last week. I think he's looking forward to that as well. Let's move on to the big men. And I'm interested to hear who you think among them is the best fit for Boston. Not even for the range, just the skill set. Because you got the Danny Wolfs who are more ball handlers, and you got some of the rim running guys in this class. You got the Calc Brenners who we've talked about at length here. Raynaud who's going to shoot the threes. Like there's an interesting mix of skill sets at center in this class, and the Celtics, who might lose Horford, Cornette, maybe even Porzingis, is a lot of up in the air at center for them, especially in the long term. They're almost certainly going to have to come out of this draft with a center, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I would honestly take Maxime Raynaud in the lottery. If he falls to Boston, I think that is just an absolute win. We're talking a guy that 20 points, 11 rebounds.
And we know they love the threes.
Yeah, and he's the second most three-pointers made in NCAA history by a 7-footer. He's 22, but he's he's still relatively new to basketball. We're talking about a guy that entered.
Isn't number one Luke Cornette?
No,
I think it is.
Lauri Markkanen.
Oh, okay.
Lauri Markkanen. In one season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in one season. So he was like on a partial scholarship when he got to Stanford. Wasn't a full-time player growing up in full-time. Basketball wasn't his main thing. He was a swimmer. So he's a late bloomer. And what he's been able to accomplish in the last 4 years, we're talking 4.5 points a game to 20. Like I said, second in the ACC in scoring, first in rebounding. He's skilled around the block. He can finish with both hands. He can post up. He can run the floor. He can attack closeouts. I think that he's really been hiding in plain sight. I've had him mocked as a first rounder all year, and I just thought it was funny. He had one game at the combine that he looked really good, and now people are saying, "Oh my gosh, he's the first rounder now." Like, no, he's been good all year. So I think if Boston ends up with him, that would be. I just think that's an absolute steal. I would take him in the lottery if I were a team, just because I think he's that good.
How's the defense gonna translate for him?
The defense, well, one, he's athletic enough and he moves well enough to where he can defend. He came on my podcast and I was, just asking him like, all right, for a guy that rebounds so well, I've always wondered why, the rim protection wasn't there. And he's a very bright kid. And he was basically telling me, his 3 years at Stanford, he had the same coach and he was kind of taught to just wall up. And then he said late in the season, just on his own, he brought in like a defensive coach or somebody to help him watch film to become a better defender. And he pointed out to me, if you look at his last 10 games on the season, he averaged 2.7 blocks per game. And it just was from a difference in philosophy. So to me, it makes sense because when I look at just how he moves and how athletic he is and how not saying that rebounding should equal like rim protection, but he grabs rebounds out of his area. And I just thought like he should be a better rim protector. And just based off of what he told me in his last 10 games, that just a difference in philosophy. And there was a difference in what he did prior to bringing in this coach to after. Yes, small sample size, but I think it's there.
That's interesting, right? And I think you consider transferring potentially too during that transition, and that's the kind of stuff you don't think about necessarily if you're just looking at like the numbers or the film or whatever it might be, and saying like, oh, this guy's weak at this, it doesn't do that great. Even with Powell earlier, like you mentioned, it's often a fit or role you have to play on a team, especially in 1 year. Over the long term, like you said too, you can end up overemphasizing certain flaws, but the stuff he does well is definitely intriguing. The way he's able to shoot from a bunch of different positions on the floor. And what did he shoot from three last year? Was it 34?
35%, which
Yeah.
for a 7-footer, you'll definitely take that. And then he can attack a closeout. So that's one of the most underrated aspects of his game is that there's a lot of clips of him attacking the closeout, putting the ball on the floor and getting guys to bite on his pump fake and get it in the lane. Like I said, I'm extremely high on him.
He shot the most pick and pop 3-point attempts in college last year, from what I'm seeing here.
Yep. And he told me he only got 2 lob dunks. And so he was, very, very bright kid. Like he'll remember plays from games and the time on the clock and very aware. And he pointed out that, a lot of his points were self-created. And he said his junior year, he caught more lobs because of the difference of personnel, but he said he only caught 2 lobs this year. So he felt like there was some points left on the board if he had like a person that could that just knew how to get on the ball on as a vertical spacer.
Who's your favorite big in this class overall?
Raynaud.
Really?
Yeah. Second favorite big, I'll go with Hansen Yang. I'm a big Hansen Yang fan. He's physical, he's tough, skilled. I mean, if you think Danny Wolf is a good passer, Hansen Yang is, to me, equal as a passer. Doesn't handle it like Danny
Where'd he
Wolf.
play? China?
Yeah, he played in China. He was good at the combine. I've thought he was worthy of a draft pick all year. I thought he caught people by surprise at the combine. I wasn't surprised because I've watched him at like U18 tournaments and he outplayed Alex Sarr. And I mean, he's physical. He's 7'1", like 250. And he made a 3 at the combine. And the combine was good for him, but it wasn't the best setting for him because he didn't have point guards on his team that could make a post-entry pass. Boogie Flan was supposed to be on his team. He ended up backing out of the combine to go back to school or transfer to Florida. But Yang was, I mean, he was good. If you just look at his minutes, the concerns are, can he keep up with the pace of the NBA? I think it is going to be an adjustment for him. The pace is a lot faster.
You got to take him some time to play, or will he be able to play right away, you think?
I think that, honestly, if Zach Edey can play, then he can play. Is he going to be a guy that's going to play a lot in the playoffs? I don't know. But I do think that he could be a wild card that you play a few minutes a game and, you maybe run some stuff from him and he'll pick up fouls or guys will foul him because he's so big. And I mean, most teams in the NBA aren't really like feeding their guys in a post, but I thought Memphis had a little bit of success with Zach Edey. So I just think for Yang, it's just going to be the adjustment of just the pace of the game. Is he going to close games for you? I don't think so, but I do think that he could be, just like a wild card that you throw in from time to time. Maybe like sometimes I don't know, I guess in football, like you get a ball to your fullback a few plays. I don't know, that's probably a bad example, but I do like Hansen Yang though.
All right, and we love the analysis from you, Rafael Barlowe. People can find your work over at NBABigBoard.com.
Yep. NBABigBoard.com is my newsletter, and I have a podcast, the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, and we do a podcast 5 days a week, and right now around draft time, it might be 10 episodes a week. I think we've already done like 8 or 9 this week already, and it's just Wednesday.
Man, I love this time of year. Love talking to guys like you, getting the insight who cover it and scout it all year and know this stuff. So appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate you sharing it with us. And again, go check out his work. Go subscribe over there and follow him at Barlowe, BARLOWE 500 on Twitter. Appreciate it, man. Good luck with the rest of your coverage this week.
No problem. Thanks for having me on anytime.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way? Let's
Yeah.
fly Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke